We're here having a casual conversation with the artist Michael Lawrence. And Michael, how did you get started in art?
When I was very small, I automatically knew I was going to be an artist. And so I started creating sculptures out of Kleenexes. And that was sort of the opening point to my creativity. And then, of course, as it went further, when I was like 8 or 9, I was already designing little books, like a book on witchcraft and magic. And it just intersected with every aspect of my life ever since I was a child. In fact, even during when I was in 4th and 5th grade, my father would put on productions at our school. And it was funny because one time I played a Joseph with my best friend Barbara on this stage behind these doors that opened up at the end of the play, and we were laughing so hard and we were throwing the baby Jesus up and down before we actually the doors were opened. And my father was so mad. He said the stage was shaking because of what you two did. But my life has always been about art, and unfortunately my family was not artistic, and so it's sort of like I knew my destiny when I was very small. And I grew up in a very small town in California called Reedley, which is basically a peasant community according to my anthropology teacher. And so my grandfather was a farmer, and my father's brothers were all farmers, and my parents and my mother were all teachers. So I had an intellectual input from my mother particularly, because when I was only 8, my mother was going to college and she was taking a history class, and she brought the treasures of Tutankhamun for me to see. And that started my lifelong obsession with Egypt. And so consequently, then when I was in high school, I was doing paintings of gods and goddesses and irreverent artwork from my art teacher, Mr. Duncan, who was a Mormon. And he loved my work, but I tried to antagonize him all the time. But nonetheless, my stuff was always in the showcase at the school window. So, but that's a little bit of it. I mean, there was so much more involved in my creativity. I was doing raku work in high school, and I was doing pen and ink. In fact, I did a drawing of the goddess Diana that was naked. And in fact, my teacher, Mr. Duncan, actually put it in the window, which I was actually surprised. It was Diana in the stars with boobs. I shouldn't have said that.